Hi, my name is Lyric, and today we're going to be continuing, finally, the Offensive Legends series by Thinking Basketball. Now, it's been a very, very long time since I have uploaded. This is my first NBA video in my return, but since I made this is actually the only Offensive Legends video that has came out since my break, because he has kind of suspended the series because he's looking on analysis for the actual NBA season that is going on. So he suspended the series for a bit. I'm guessing he's going to get back into it in the off season. But yeah, so it's lucky for me, that actually means I'm only one episode behind. So yeah, so we're on to Offensive Legends episode 6, which is by Thinking Basketball, which was a sixth man the MVP of a dynasty by which is I'm assuming the video is going to be about Manu Ginobili. It's off of the thumbnail and stuff. And yeah, we're gonna see. So leave in the comments below, who do you think was more important for the Spurs system? Was it Tony Parker or Manu Ginobili? Tony Parker, I think, gets more, people say more because he won the Finals MVP in 07, and he was better definitely in 14. But, I mean, 2005, Manu Ginobili against the Pistons, I mean, I would put him against anyone, not gonna lie to you. So, we'll see how this goes. So, yeah, we're gonna be reacting to Offensive Legends Episode 6. If you like NBA videos, I have an original NBA content channel, link in the description below. It's called Lyric Rumbles. I upload original NBA content. Obviously, I haven't uploaded that in a long time because I haven't uploaded anything for a long time, but I will get back to it pretty soon, and the video quality should greatly improve. So yeah, so go subscribe to that, and also I have tons of NBA videos on my channel, reactions if you want to see those. I have the entire rest of this series, well, the Greatest Peaks series by Thinking Basketball, and just other Thinking Basketball videos I have reacted to. He's one of my favorite NBA YouTubers because of his analysis on the NBA content. But yeah, let's get into it. What's the sixth man, the MVP of a dynasty? Let's see. San Antonio Spurs. Also, by the way, obviously, go subscribe to Thinking Basketball. Go watch his original video before you watch my video, or at least have it on in the background or something so you can get the view. So I don't just, like, get all of his views. Well, obviously, I'm not going to get all of his views, but, steal views from him. 100 or so views this video probably gets. But, yeah, let's get it. June 14th, 2007. Fourth, this is championship number 4, sweeping the Cavs. Look at that score, man. Such a 2000 score. 82 to 80. 83 to 82. Nuts.
Just won their third title in 5 years. Tony Parker was named Finals MVP, joining Tim Duncan, who won it the last 2 times, and then
last 3 times. But Parker and Ginobili weren't on the first championship team in '99.
There's Manu Ginobili.
Ginobili's one also the greatest draft steals of all time. He was taken, like, I think 57th pick or something, and then he was in, like, Eurostats for like 3 years, and then rookie season he finally comes at, like, I don't know, 22 or something. No, he probably was like mid-20s in his debut, and he goes on to win a championship.
The third wheel who came off the bench, scoring 18 points per game. But look more.
18 points per game in today's stats doesn't sound that impressive. Like, those guys like Jordan Clarkson, he'll go out average 18 points a game. But this time, that's really impressive because there's barely anyone averaging over 20 points a game. And maybe one guy in the entire NBA averaging 30. Probably Kobe or maybe LeBron. And Iverson, McGrady, those guys coming out and averaging 30, and there's a lot fewer guys putting up the big stats because the offensive, less just plus points scored, less offensive era. So yeah, averaging 18 points a game, which is like averaging 23 or something in today's modern NBA.
Closely, and something unbelievable happens. Back in the first quarter, the Spurs were down by 4 before Manu checked in, and he immediately made his presence felt with a few big plays on both ends of the floor.
Lefty.
When he went back to the bench near the end of the half, San Antonio had a 7-point lead. The Spurs were then outscored by 3 points without him to start the second, but again, Manu came in and did damage, drilling a 3 and then back-cutting some poor defender into a pair of free throws, and when he left at the end of the quarter, that lead was back to 10, only for it to evaporate when he went to the bench, just so.
That's the definition of value, man. You're talking about most valuable. That's the definition of valuable. When you're on, things go great. When you're off, things go terribly wrong. That's a Jokic effect.
He could return in the
modern terms, that's a Jokic effect.
Fourth, and start slicing his way through the Cleveland defense, and finally put the Spurs in front for good with this high-arcing 3. This was
Rainbow.
Just one game. But what if I told you that this pattern repeated itself in every game in this series, in more than just this series, and for more than just those playoffs. That Argentina's flying man was way ahead of his time, that he was far
KD?
more than one of the greatest six
Manu with hair is dangerous, man.
men to ever
Don't mess with
play.
Manu with hair.
And at his peak, that he was a superstar hiding in plain sight.
So I think a lot of people say about the Spurs players is that they had Greg Popovich, it was a big influence, it was like the Spurs system, But how much do you think that actually affected them? Like how good do you think Manu Ginobili would have been if he wasn't on the Spurs? Like he was just like on like some other team. How good would he have been? How good was he at his best form because he was in the Spurs system, or did the Spurs system kind of like put him into a role? He could have been like a 27-point per game scorer on some other team. What do you guys think about that? Missed this intro, man.
The first season of Greatest Peaks was about the best of the best. But this time we're looking at trendsetters, unique archetypes, and even controversial players who make up the legends of NBA offense.
LA happens, and I remember Kobe Bryant saying to me when Manu came in to the game, like, Bruce, who's that white boy? I said, oh, he ain't no white boy. He Argentinian.
Ginobili was like a shot of adrenaline.
Ain't no white boy, Argentinian. That's funny.
Crossing over dudes and hurling himself toward the basket, changing directions like a pinball before gliding to the hoop with some crazy
The moves are crazy.
finish. He
Lefty.
sort of flowed like water through small cracks in the defense, bending and slithering into tiny creases with some of the most unique.
You talk about players who would have aged well into modern NBA. Manu's definitely one of those players who would have been just as good, if not way better, into modern NBA with this
and
play style.
creative movements in league history.
Against Sean Marion, man,
Like,
great defender.
he didn't wrap the ball behind his back for flair, but for function. He cuts left here, and instead of a crossover, he protects the ball by putting it behind his back.
That's
and
genius.
Here he uses it to wedge between two defenders, and notice that quick little
Dude, it's insane.
direction change there before spinning it off the corner of the
So
backboard
smooth.
like
No hesitation to that play. Like, he didn't even have to take a moment to think about it.
a pool shark. He had these deceptively sharp cutbacks where his upper body barely moves, but his hips change directions and suddenly he's by you. Most shifty ball handlers who can cut quickly plant a foot in the ground and turn their entire body. They often have very flexible ankles and get low to the floor to explode laterally. But Ginobili had flexible hips and even knees that
God
helped
dang, that's
him
crazy.
turn. The hips are facing the baseline, then suddenly the corner, and that's because his left leg turns mid-stride to redirect him, and he
That's
never
crazy.
really has to stop running because of this. His torso then turned after his
Changing directions without stopping is insane.
hips, so it's harder to see that he's changing directions, and defenders can be a step slow reacting. I also think this slithered him through tight spaces where others wouldn't even dare. He's headed directly into the defender here, turns that left leg again, nearly lands on his foot, then slips the right leg through with a long stride
Oh my
and
God.
rolls it in. This technique gave him a different pace than
Oh, dude. R.I.P. NBA on TNT. I don't know. It hasn't been confirmed, but there's a good chance that it might be ending, man. Shaq, Charles, Ernie, and Kenny, dude. The OG, dude. It's be so sad. It's the big four.
most players
sad.
coming off screens and exploding to the rim. So he had a ton of force and power moving through contact
Well, I tell you, man. Ginobili with hair. You don't mess with him.
back to the hoop.
Is 05 finals?
Being left-handed helped too, because defenders weren't accustomed to his driving angles. The shot blockers used to going right here, but Manu's shifting back to the left. And this is
Yeah.
all one-legged leaping, where he uses his speed to glide around opponents. He'd also take strange angles on his drives in the paint, moving more right to left across the face of the basket instead of assaulting it head on. And his use of English and touch helped him finish on these approaches. We actually saw this earlier against Cleveland, where he doesn't move to the front of the rim,
Splitting
avoids
the
the
defense
shot
there.
blocker, and spins it in near the square. He also threw people off with the timing and acceleration of his drives, taking these big, long steps past defenders, and notice the early gather and the power with those two big strides.
Gather step in 2000s is so crazy. Innovator, man. And we're gonna get to. I'm sure we're gonna get to the Euro step pretty soon. Manu Ginobili, despite not being European, one of the innovators of the Euro step.
Timing and pace messed with people.
Maybe the main
Rasheed
right
Wallace
there.
thinks he's jumping here, but he has a second step after the gather and flies right by him. The natural progression of these moves was the legendary Euro step, planting in one direction to pick it up and go in the other. And today the move is used across the world, largely defined by that quick single side step, but Ginobili's had a second step after he picked up the dribble early. Back in the mid-2000s,
two side steps is crazy.
Footwork surprised defenders, where he charges at an opponent, plants the foot one way on the pickup, then gets two steps the other way through traffic. Because his lower body was so sturdy, he packed a lot of punch on these drives. So he could Euro step at high speeds like a blur, watch him lean his upper body in one direction as the legs turn the other way, and NASA should really study this dude. In addition to the Euro, he could just cross people too. There's another shot blocker running the wrong way. You're going the wrong way! And one of his go-to moves was splitting the double team like this, where he could make a 90-degree turn and then bring the thumb.
The turning and changing direction, I think, is the main things that are really helping him out here to go along with the speed.
Because he's part magician, he'd do this with a behind-the-back dribble as well. And again,
oh my God,
this
dude.
was
Got hammered too.
because he protects the ball with his body as he goes by, and he could turn at an atypical point in the dribble. He doesn't have to plant hard on the outside foot, lean forward, and make space for a crossover. Instead, he just swivels his hips in between dribbles and teleports right through a defender.
Yeah, the protecting the ball with his body is really good. It makes him less like where he doesn't have to do like the crazy handles, tween shit more. He can just kind of he just protect the ball with his body. It's a really smart play. He does a lot.
He also went behind the back for his step back jumper, and this might be the most insane combination of dribbling moves that I've ever seen, going Leo Messi on 3 All-Stars and finishing with the
literally Argentinian too.
Sham God at the end. The man was dropping people with the chamois since he entered the league in 2003. This is the fourth quarter of Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals, and he went to it not once but twice down the stretch. Ginobili took a ton of free throws during his peak years in the playoffs, and his total
we're seeing him getting hammered a lot in these clips.
Volume of rim attempts
it gets to the rim so easily, that's why.
Is only slightly behind the leading guards and wings this century. So he was difficult to keep out of the paint, and he could use that paint pressure to set up his step back. Manu didn't really elevate to shoot over defenders, so he used the step back to create space on the outside. And while sometimes these were long twos, he took plenty of threes off the dribble as well. This gave him a futuristic shot profile, where 3/4 of his
that's what I'm saying. He worked very well into modern NBA because of just his play style.
His field goal attempts were either at the rim or from behind the three-point line, similar to guards
Don't show Mark sad like that. That
20
doesn't hurt me.
years later. Damian Lillard didn't have that shot profile until 2020, and from 2005 to 2008, Manu drilled 39% of his threes. Since he was a pick-and-roll heavy guard, that meant teams couldn't sag under the screen or he'd make them pay. But if you chase him over the screen, he can get into the paint and make love to the hoop. And in the exact same setup, he can reuse the screen, get to that left hand, and hit a teammate right in the mitts. Or if Duncan doesn't roll, he can Euro step into space and kick it out when the extra defender is pulled over to stop that.
Yeah, you get to the rim. You get to the rim like that with so many moves. Your gravity is just insane. Pulling everyone in.
Left hand, and that leads to more great offense. Seattle started trapping Ginobili in this game with a third defender shifted over to help, and that opened the backside pass. And a minute later, they're in the same coverage again, so Manu throws a fastball for a dunk this time, and he just patiently picked this defense apart with a subtle ball fake and another dime on the inside.
Dimes are crazy.
He was dangerous in the pick and roll, reading the defense, pulling up from 3, or finding ways to slice through defenders and score at the basket. Yet,
I know we're not gonna. I know this is kind of a tangent, but I do think after he does this offensive legend series, he does a defensive legend series, because I really like seeing an analysis on that too. That'd be a really interesting series.
he never averaged more than 21 points or 6 assists per game. So why didn't he put up bigger numbers? Why did he occasionally come off the bench? And
More than occasionally.
why wasn't he given a bigger role in the San Antonio offense?
You know, I'm trying to be Mr. Coach, and he's doing things that are, say, a little bit too mustardy for me. And I would tend to try to correct him probably a little bit too much and try to pull him in.
Manu joined the Spurs in the 2003 season after leading Argentina to a silver medal in the 2002 World Cup,
And then he leads them to the gold medal in the 04 Olympics.
stunning Team USA
Which is insane.
in the process. Prior to that, he won back-to-back Italian League MVPs, but the Spurs actually drafted him before all of his international success when he was an unknown 21-year-old rookie in Italy. As a 25-year-old NBA rookie, expectations
25-year-old rookie's insane.
weren't very high, but on his second
At least not like Paolo Prigioni or Andre Ingram.
NBA possession, he was in perfect position to take away a layup from a Kobe Bryant pass, and there were a number of vintage Ginobili moments throughout this game that would become the norm in the following seasons. Now, there certainly was an adjustment period, both for Ginobili to acclimate to the NBA as a sidekick next to a dominant post player, and for Coach Greg Popovich to understand Manu's unique game. Here's how he described it during Ginobili's retirement.
So I had to learn to stop going and say, Manu, geez, oh whiz, what? Do we need that? Why?
Oh my god, that pass is
I am
insane.
Manu. This is what I do.
I could see why Greg Popovich would have been mad at him. Because Greg Popovich is obviously just such a notoriously hardline coach. Just him seeing Manu do these fucking insane behind the back, fucking white chocolate type passes. It's insane, dude.
And he grew more
I also love that fucking quote. I'm Manu, it's what I do.
comfortable in his second year in 2004, but he didn't fully
The dunk's
unleash
insane.
himself until 2005 after becoming a full-time starter. Although,
Yeah, 05 was the only Spurs championship team where he was the full-time starter.
I wonder if that could have happened sooner, given how dominant he looked in the 04 Olympics, leading Argentina to a gold medal at 27. The ball handling, playmaking, and unique athleticism were on full display. And his development as a pick-and-roll passer was a key step in becoming a primary offensive weapon. When the big man steps up to meet his penetration, he could blend the drive into a great roll pass.
And that's a really good skill to have when you have, Tim Duncan on your team.
Or if that defender left the screener, he could look at the roller to open up a pass to the wing. He could
Spurs were always an advanced team with three-point shooters.
do the other way too, looking to the corner to throw off the big man and squeeze in
Ooh,
a layup pass.
nice fake there.
And I love how decisive he is with some of these quick dishes to the roller, where he attacks right as the screen arrives and then reads the defense quickly, often manipulating defenders with his head movement before whipping one off the dribble. This time he gets downhill off the screen and hits this defender with the ball fake and then passes. Duncan was
Nash
able
got done
to
for
corral
there,
that
man.
one.
Nash got
Although
done for.
Sometimes the passes were a little too ambitious for Timmy's hands, and other times Manu was trying to hit a home run and they weren't on the same page. He could
That happens with players who just think way too fast. Sometimes, your teammates don't even get what's going
be a
on.
little overzealous with some of his deliveries on some of these big ideas. Or, as Tony Parker put it,
Because when Manu is two pass, you have the legend pass that everybody will talk about, one unbelievable pass, and the stands to the fans pass.
I don't think he was actually that aggressive on some of these reads, though. If anything, he could have a few blind spots when operating.
I love how obviously the Spurs are so connected with each other, like the whole thing. You know, they're all the whole big three, Pop. You know, all of them. It's just such a wholesome franchise.
From up top, maybe because he wasn't tall enough to see over bodies or find the right angle. But when he did see it, he threw some serious
With the
fastballs
Band-Aid on.
from out there,
Ooh.
including what's probably the fastest pass ever in 2012 against the Lakers.
That's an insane.
That speed really helped
Dude, that is such an insane pass, dude. Oh my
on
god.
his kickouts, where he could spray it out to shooters after attacking. And here it comes all the way back to him to finish the job. And this time he gets downhill into the paint
His shot form is like kind of unorthodox. It's like a slow shot, but like it works. The lefty, man.
and goes to the one-handed bullet to the corner shooter.
The bullet passes are so
He also
crazy.
had some really slick dimes in transition, anticipating this tiny opening before Ben Wallace happens. And I love that he faked
You know, sometimes you make a great play like that, and then, you know, 4-time DPOY comes in.
this one to no one to move this defender out of the way for a dunk.
Dude, that's gotta feel so bad, bro. You got faked out by a pass to no one. That's just gotta feel so bad for the player, the defender.
But I do think that pick and roll was a perfect setup for his scoring and playmaking skills, because he could read the coverage and exploit it, crossing back into space, and here it's a Euro step, or he can spray it to a shooter. If the coverage is too soft, he'll pop a three off the dribble, and if teams successfully forced him left into the big man, he could use his sorcery to stress the defense anyway. As he developed those pick and roll reads, his scoring and playmaking role expanded, with his offensive load peaking in 2008 just behind the league's heaviest lifters. This coincided with an increased role for Tony Parker, while Tim Duncan was gradually featured less in the offense over.
Yeah, because early 2000s, Tim Duncan carrying the Spurs, you know, but slowly, Parker and Ginobili got better, and Duncan got a little bit worse, or just didn't get involved as much in the offense because he didn't need to be. Yeah.
The course of the decade. So Ginobili was a co-pilot out there, but could he have been more? Should he have been more? Maybe his lack of a mid-range game prevented him from being a grade A superstar during that era. He wasn't someone who could rise up and fire over defenders and hit a difficult shot
Yeah, it's because his fucking jump shot's so slow.
on demand. But I actually think that was a minor blessing, because instead of forcing inefficient mid-rangers, he would often have space to shoot, but instinctively look for something better and more efficient. On a weak offensive team,
Yeah, all the Spurs players were such great team players. That's why they made such a great system.
forcing a 15-footer might be ideal, but on a good team, they can just reset into something much harder to guard, and Parker kicks it back to Manu for 3 free throws.
There's so much passes on the Spurs teams. It's actually insane. Like, they're the most passing team I've ever seen in my life.
Ginobili
Especially when you go later, like 2014 Spurs, so many passes.
took by far the fewest mid-range shots of the big three, and that helped him reach efficiency heights that Duncan and Parker never touched. And per possession, he looked like the better scorer for basically his entire prime. Manu would have put up bigger numbers, but he was willing to wait for screening actions to unfold like this, then default to a Duncan post-up while he looked for cracks on the weak side, and Timmy misses him for a short turnaround instead. A minute later, he doesn't force anything in transition, but instead of resetting into a pick and roll, Duncan wants to post again. Manu clears to the other side, and so Tony Parker's left with a less efficient long two. I wouldn't call Duncan post-ups bad offensive possessions for the Spurs. He was a fairly effective scorer and could set up teammates. But in general, it's harder for post players to create really good offense without elite passing and scoring. And Duncan had...
Yeah, if you don't have elite passing and scoring, either one, they don't have to defend you that much in the post, so it's easier to defend your shots. And if you're really good at scoring, they'll send a bunch of players on you, and if it's hard to if you're not a great passer out the post, it's hard to set up a good play out of that.
Plenty of bumpy possessions down there in his late 20s and early 30s, while Manu was at his peak. According to Synergy tracking data, from 2005 to 2008, Ginobili pick and rolls were worth about 8 additional points every 100 playoff possessions, but the Spurs went to a Duncan post-up nearly twice as often. The offense was also better when Ginobili played without Duncan than when...
So, obviously Tim Duncan was the main option on the Spurs, but do you think there's a case to be made that Manu Ginobili is actually a better offensive player than Tim Duncan? Just like strictly offense. Obviously, defense is not even, but like just strictly offense. Do you think that Manu Ginobili was arguably their best offensive player?
Duncan played without Ginobili. So it's hard for me to view all these Duncan post-ups as an optimal approach once Manu emerged. When we looked at their overall offensive load, Ginobili passed Duncan after a few years. But look at what happens when the big three shares the floor together. Duncan is still ahead of Ginobili for most of his prime, with Parker doing the most when all three are out there together. When only one of them is out there alone, Duncan occasionally ramps up the volume, but it's Ginobili who does some serious heavy lifting, averaging 28 points per 7.
That is, I think, really further proof that if he was on his own team, he would have been still a fantastic offensive player.
75, while creating like a superstar wing. So, despite looking like the best scorer and playmaker on the team, Manu took on the smallest role when the big three played together. But without the benefit of 2020 hindsight, just how valuable was he playing this more complementary role next to two other stars?
The way the team was set up, we all needed each other, and without Manu, there were no championships.
No Ginobili discussion is complete without addressing his playing time. Manu peaked at about 36 to 37 minutes in key playoff series, and during his prime played just 33 minutes a night in the postseason. This was during an era when the best players usually logged 40-plus minutes in big series, so
Josh Hart.
even as a starter, Gino played less than most great players, and I've always wondered why. One idea is that Coach Pop staggered Parker and Ginobili to always have a star ball handler out there, although that has minor benefits in the playoffs when everyone plays so many minutes anyway. Another possible reason was Manu's chaotic rogue improvisation that sometimes drove Pop mad. But
Makes sense.
the most interesting explanation to me has always been about Ginobili's intense high-revving motor. He's described himself as having only one gear back then, and that was especially true on defense, because unlike most star wings, he didn't conserve energy on that end and was incredibly active, always looking to make a big play, while also willing to...
The energy. Dude, half of defense is just how much energy you have. How much do you want to play defense? That's like half of all defense play, guys. Like, literally, Kyrie Irving, right, has been a notoriously, not that great, if not bad defender most of his career. Lately, when he's had so much energy, and actually trying out there, he's a great defender. He's been a good defender. It's like half of defense is literally just how much you care about playing defense.
switch and...
Which is why you have a coach and a culture that's so defensive oriented like the Spurs were, Even guys that maybe Ginobili wouldn't have been a great defensive player in other systems, but because, he just gave a shit so much about defense, he ended up being a pretty good defensive player sometimes.
Against much bigger opponents. It's outside of the scope of this series, but I find Manu's defense incredibly impressive. He had really good awareness of threats in the paint, often rotating early. He fought through screens and chased opponents around like he was a defensive specialist, and he had a knack for making big defensive plays in big games. He also has the reputation of a gambler, and he certainly did gamble at times, but Manu wasn't constantly compromising his team structure by taking unnecessary risks, and a lot of his gambits were calculated and paid off. If he had played enough minutes to qualify, he would have finished in the top 5 in steal rate every year for the first 5 years of his career. And I think this defense is a key reason the Spurs always look so good with him on the floor. From 2005 to
So much energy, man.
2007, San Antonio outscored opponents by a whopping 13 points per 100 with Manu in the game. Nearly 11 points better than when he sat on the bench.
That's crazy,
In the same
actually.
time frame,
Especially when he was a bench player. That's crazy.
the Spurs were plus 12 with Duncan on the court, and they saw a 13-point drop-off when he went to the bench. So,
sense.
per possession, they look like co-captains of the ship. Maybe Manu couldn't play more because of his style, in the same way that pace and space stars today play less because of the increased demands on their body.
I can
Ginobili
see that.
hustled his way into his share of
We have so much energy, you're gonna run out of it eventually.
injuries, and there should be books written about
God
his
damn.
toughness. This is from a postseason game.
The fucking full bandage across the nose. It's just so
He
crazy.
played with a
Steve Nash type
broken
beat.
arm, crashing to the floor.
Oh my
then
God.
just a few seconds later, flying in to steal an offensive rebound and create another shot for a team.
That's insane. That's one of the, you would never see that in modern NBA, bro. Someone with a broken arm playing, crashing the floor, passing it out. That's
Teammate.
crazy. That's an
He
insane
once
play.
ruptured a testicle and somehow walked off without crying like a newborn, though I
Ow! God damn!
suppose that's nothing for a man who swats bats out of the air. Anyway,
Rupturing. Oh my, dude. Oh my god, dude.
the point
I've never heard of that. That's
here
crazy.
is that he burned bright all over the court, and that might have
hustle
optimized
is
his
so crazy.
overall value while capping his minutes. Even on offense, despite running possessions through Duncan and Parker, Manu was still active away from the ball. They go with the Parker-Duncan pick and roll here. Phoenix defends it well, and now Ginobili's reading the play, ready to dart into an opening and make something happen out of nowhere.
Calculated,
He
man.
was a dangerous cutter because he spotted little cracks to slice into, and at 6'6" in shoes, he was big enough to finish in the lane. But where he really excelled was attacking closeouts on the catch like this, where a teammate moves Manu's defender just a touch, and he instantly goes and finds something
Great at taking advantage
better.
of, small
This
things.
is the concept of 0.5, acting within half a second of receiving the ball to strain defenses. And unless Manu was waiting for a
It's a good concept. Good concept. Also, we got Sun Shack here.
screen or a set play to unfold, he was quick to act with the rock, relocating to a soft spot here, which was the straw that broke the defense's back. The Spurs set up a Duncan post-up on this one. Detroit fronts him, which means a backside defender needs to slide over, and Ginobili exploits even a mini closeout just off that ball reversal. This style of play fits so well next to other offensive talent because it capitalizes on the advantages they create, serving as
Yeah, that's really good because you want players that scale up. It's better to have players that make good teams great rather than players who make bad teams good. So yeah, he works really well against other offensive stars because they make these advantages, and he's so good at taking advantage of those, even like little bitty advantages to make bigger advantages. He really, he puts the snowball down the hill, popping up the advantages when it helps them with a little help from others.
an offensive lubricant that takes good shots and finds even better ones. So his off-ball game works next to various archetypes because he was a good catch-and-shoot weapon. He was dangerous running into handoffs like this, or adjusting a route like that and flaring into the corner for an open triple. And when the ball hit him on the move, he was quick to pass as well. We know that Ginobili and Duncan had similar footprints when they were on versus off the court in the regular season.
Which is crazy, considering, Duncan, top 10 player of all time, and he having a similar impact to the team.
But in those playoffs, we finally see some separation. The Spurs outscored opponents by 8 points per 100 with Duncan on the court and Ginobili on the bench. And they were outscored by 3 points per 100 when Manu played without Timmy. That's the first major piece of evidence we've seen that suggests Ginobili was more of a sidekick. And it's completely wrong.
Yeah.
It's actually Manu's minutes that the Spurs dominated, and Duncan's units who were outscored.
Nice little trickery there. Nice little trickery. That's crazy, man. For you to have a bigger on-off impact in the playoffs than, the superstar, one of the greatest players of all time. It's really depicts how underrated he is.
Scored without Ginobili. Yes, that's right. The Spurs won 2 titles and made 3 conference finals by crushing teams with Ginobili on the court, and then struggled mightily when he went to the bench. Remember, these are small samples, and Duncan played 6 more minutes per game, so his impact couldn't be as targeted, but this same pattern holds from 2004 to 2011, where San Antonio was better than Ginobili's playoff minutes in every postseason other than 2010. Manu also looks like the better player in our box score model in more than half of those series. And along with the regular season signals, that gives him a pretty good argument as the most valuable Spur during his prime years.
Which is, that's insane. Just insane to be arguably the most valuable player on a team with the greatest power forward of all time.
After all, Duncan played through nagging injuries during the middle of the 2000s, yet San Antonio peaked during those seasons when Ginobili fully actualized. Personally, I'm skeptical that he could have played 40 minutes a night and carried a franchise. But on a well-built team, he was an amazing two-way player who provided some monumental impact throughout his career.
Which is arguably better.
So, despite coming off the bench, and despite his reduced minutes, I think there's a strong case that Manu Ginobili was San Antonio's other superstar. To support this channel, check out...
Alright, that was a fantastic video, fantastic analysis of Manu Ginobili. What do you think? Do you think the Spurs had 2 superstars in Duncan and Ginobili? And just treat your opinions on it in the comments below. Also, put other NBA videos you would like me to watch and all that stuff, and if you're excited about my return or anything, hopefully, watch my original NBA videos, description below. And we plan on watching more Thinking Basketball and daily NBA videos coming. Goodbye.